Hey, happy Survivor Girl Sunday, and welcome back to the Survivor Girl podcast. I am so excited to have you guys here joining us tonight. I have a really special guest, but before we get into that, I'm going to go ahead and do the disclaimer. I am not a therapist, neither is my guest a therapist or a doctor that can diagnose or prescribe. We're just here to share our stories and hope to inspire and uplift others because I feel like part of the journey is to share your journey, to inspire other people, to help them get through whatever it is that they might be going through. Maybe the same thing that we're going through with what we share on this show. So that's all we're hoping to do with the show, and we're just happy that you guys are here. So before I get too much further into that, I would like to introduce my special guest. Sorry, guys, Brad Glassford.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you guys for having me on tonight.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about your life and what you've gone through, the things that you have been thriving and surviving through, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about a fundraiser that you have going on that we've been sharing on the podcast. And I guess we'll just go ahead and get into what you do and what brings you here today.
Well, I guess um, you guys invited me because of not only the fundraiser thing that's been happening, but um, I have been having some very uh, physical issues really for a good chunk of probably about 10 years now, but even more so really in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been really the worst for me, unfortunately. And a lot of it has to do with limited mobility and such. And I'm just trying to get everything, get the word spread out. I um, started the fundraiser to help me a little bit to, save up a little bit so that I maybe can get, a mobility scooter or something, um, or whatnot. So I don't know. I appreciate you guys with, sharing the fundraisers on all your platforms that you guys have. The Survivor Girl podcast here, the Don't Make This Weird podcast, and also the Strange Friends Media. Thank you guys very much for all that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I seen that you had posted it, and I've known you for several years, and we actually have a mutual. I call her my sister, and your real sister,
Yep,
your
she's my.
biological sister,
Yep.
and your niece and nephew are my godchildren. And I seen you post that, and so did Chris from Don't Make This Weird and Tony. And we just wanted to help to put that out there because we see, you keep on going, you keep on doing everything and living your life, even though you have mobility, less mobility here as you used to.
Right.
And
Right.
to be able to help, I mean, anything that we could do to help you get forward with that, it's just, we had to share it. So I'm glad that you're here to kind of let the people know that are listening that have seen this fundraiser out there, what's going on, and why we're trying to get the money raised for you. You've been through quite a bit in your life, and I just really want to know what your story was because I've never really asked you that. I've known you for a long time, but I never was just
Right.
like,
Right.
hey, what's going on? So I
Well,
guess to just tell everybody a little bit about what you've done because you're really a big part of our community. You do a lot of stuff with the media and in our community here. So if you want to give a little bit of that, and then we'll get into your story further.
right. Well, I was born in Lapeer, and I consider Lapeer County and Macomb County basically my home areas. Even though I actually was raised in Romeo, um, I actually started volunteering in a way for a broadcast station there back when I was about 12 years old, and I pretty much I fell in love with doing media stuff. And so for about 15, 16 years, that's all I did. I did TV and radio a lot. And then I just pretty much started dabbing more into the social media outlet. But I've also done other works besides TV and radio. Like you said, community.
Hmm.
Um, I was on the board of uh, two different homeless organizations here in Tuscola County, actually, for several years. I also was worked in the mental health field as well for about 7 years. I guess I did that. In more than one, I was a paid employee, but I also did volunteer time as well. I also was on the Tuscola Behavioral Health Systems Board for a few years. So I've done more than just broadcasting. I gave back to the community because found myself once homeless. And so, because of that experience that I went through, I just decided to pay it forward, and then that's how I got involved with um, the Drop-In Center, which is in relation to mental health, um, and that led me to not only employment there, but it led me to, like I said, being on two other different organizations boards, helping out as best as I can, and giving back. And I also actually three actually, because I also was part of another organization that would help people who actually faced evictions or was actually looking for housing. I don't know if they're even still technically around anymore, but it was here right here in Cairo actually. But I did that for a couple years as well. So, but really, all that different time, like you said, I've survived all because I even had my physical mobility issues even during all those times of working. I just kept myself going no matter how bad I felt
Yeah.
or anything like that because I just didn't want to give up.
And that right there is just beyond inspiring. We've seen you have that fight and you just keep on going no matter what. And we know a lot of people that continue to push forward no matter what it is that they're facing. And I think that's a good message to put out, especially right now, because people are facing a lot of things to just not give up no matter how hard it is.
Right,
And
right.
you've seen firsthand with working with people that needed that kind of motivation, that lift of how important that is to continue to keep on going.
Yeah, especially when when I dived more into giving back for mental health consumers and people that were homeless or facing homelessness. That is, um, yeah, that opened my eyes to a different world that I never seen before. Because as like I said, all I dealt with was media, TV and radio, and so, but I that was another way I gave back to the community too was by outreach and through that medium. And I still do obviously through social media, even though I don't get paid for it because I don't expect a dime for it.
Right.
But
Yeah, we get to see, the posts that you do, and they're very informative, and you make sure that you look into everything before you post. You make sure that it is legit, it's not fake news, it's not, from wherever before you start posting. And it's really helpful because in the community, there's a lot of things that we don't see. And with you, broadcasting or posting that out there, it helps for us to be informed of what's going on as well. So
right, I
we
do.
appreciate that.
I do scan. I thank you very much. And I do scan a lot, and I do make sure I post something, or if I get some source or whatever, looking at everything before I do anything, just so that I'm not like some people will just be like post right away, like
Yeah.
20 seconds after they see something. I, on the other hand, I give it a minute or two before I post something, and then I will, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with everything going on, you see so much of that with people just posting and not checking into what's behind it, if it's truly fact checking or, if that's really what's going on. So
Right.
it is very helpful to see all this stuff. And you even put up the weather and whatnot for the county and,
Yeah, yeah.
very helpful.
I've been doing weather forecasting and all that for 20 years as of this year. I've been in media altogether for 25.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
this is a milestone year for me.
Awesome. That's really cool. It's really cool. I'm glad that you're able to join us tonight. It's cool to see that, but also with you talking about, working for the homeless coalition and everything here in this area, I didn't realize that we had that much of, issue with that. I wasn't really aware of that. You see that quite a bit around here.
I have not just Tuscola County, but I've seen in San Luis County and Huron County because, like I said, one of the organizations that I was served on, um, I forgot what the name was called, but they're based in like the four counties: Lapeer County, San Luis County, Huron, and Tuscola County, and they basically were an organization that helped uh, and make aware of the homelessness that is out there.
So with that too, you said that you were able to help with people getting into their own places or whatever, or
Uh,
get
that,
back on their feet?
yeah, that was through. And you just reminded me too, because what you just said a few minutes ago, the Homeless Coalition.
Yeah.
That's the name I was thinking of. Tuscola County Homeless Coalition. That's the other place that I was volunteered for from time to time, and we would also um, would like if the person met the qualifications, obviously you still had to go through the qualification to get the assistance because it was not $5-10 here. You were getting a few $100s or something. Um, but but after about a couple years of me being there, we were starting to get assistance from FEMA as well.
Hmm.
So that added on to it because we had a level that we could only go up to. I think it was like 400 we can go to. I believe it was. Don't quote me on it though.
Right.
It's been a few years since I've
Right.
done that now. But I believe it was 400. And then, like I said, a couple years into it, I did for like 2 or 3 years. I worked alongside some great people. Some who've unfortunately passed on. Uh, but when FEMA kicked in, they would go to a different amount. I think it was like 1,000. I think they would add
Oh,
to
wow.
it just to make sure that because what the money would go towards is if a person was homeless or whatever, give them money for like first month security deposit,
Mhm.
rent money like that. So just so that they would get back on their feet again. So I enjoyed doing that as well. That was a fun time too because I once again liked helping people. So
Right.
that was good to do. I loved
And
it.
that helps too when you're facing your own you said you had some health issues that you had to push through and to keep on going through,
Mm.
and you still are going through stuff like that, but being able to help others, it gives you a different sense of pushing through, and trying to make sure that you're able to be there to do what you have to do no matter of what you're facing. And
Right, and despite the last 2 or 3 years that I've gone through the most major part of my physical issues, I've still managed to be a little social butterfly, I guess, and help people as best I can because I always try to put others in front of myself, and I've tried to do that as best I can. I know sometimes it's not as easy. It's easier said than done, but
right.
I'm the type of person that would go broke to see someone else happy or whatnot because I don't know I've always had the same clothes or whatever because I never wanted to spend on myself,
Mhm.
spend on someone else or help somebody else out and all that and everything. So yeah, I've always kind of been that way, and I don't know technically where I got that from. I don't know what family member. I think my grandparents on my dad's side I think were the ones that, but
Yeah. So when you during working, was there ever a time where you had?
oh, I see.
Yeah, there was an ant there.
Okay.
There's an
I
ant.
knew she was
Only
doing
in
something
studio
behind me. What
live,
the
like
heck?
you guys get this stuff. So yeah, there's an
Oh,
ant
that's
like
nice.
right behind you.
Okay.
And I can't
see
move,
him.
so. But okay, not no more. There he goes.
Anyway,
So anyway,
like I said,
live. This is what happened.
anyway.
But anyway, with
See,
going,
I even help by doing that too. Hey, I'm an exterminator now too.
so going through life, when did you start to have issues to where like your mobility was less, or like how did that all come about? That
Well,
you know,
first,
with what's going, what happened there?
right. Well, first you kind of have to really actually kind of go back to the beginning. And I mean, I'll be 37 here next month in July. Um,
July's a good month to have a birthday in.
exactly right. Yeah, because yeah, three of us here.
Uh-huh.
Three of us were July. Yep. But yeah, you have to go right to the beginning, unfortunately, and I didn't actually notice until probably in my teenage years when I fully understood more. I was born with fetal alcohol syndrome,
Oh, okay.
and the effects of it really didn't start happening until my teenage years. So that's when my parents finally told me, "Oh, by the way, you were born with this." And well, actually, my dad told me because my stepmom was part of my life, obviously, since I was 3 years old. But obviously, she was my birth mother.
Right.
But uh, so you really have to go back there first to say, okay, well, this is what this stems from, and yada yada yada. Um, but yeah, that's what I was born with, and so by the time I was like 13, 14, in the middle school, going into high school and all that, that's basically when everything started to take shape of the unfortunate things started to happen.
Mhm.
I was a sophomore in high school when I started to have issues with my kidneys. Um, and I had ended up having some kidney stones, and I still have them to this day, unfortunately. But thankfully, they're not bad, and so they don't cause me a lot. As far as everything else, though, um, I was still in high school when I developed the arthritis in my legs. Um, by the time I was 20 years old, the doctors, because I kept complaining about them all the time, even though I was biking and walking and all that kind of stuff and whatnot. I still was having issues. I'm like, what in the world?
Mhm.
So I go into my doctor at the time where I lived at, um, which was near Lapeer, and I asked the doctor, this and that, and so he ordered some X-rays and all that kind of mumbo jumbo, all the medical crap, and I call it medical crap only because I've been frustrated over the years with all this. So
Oh, I imagine.
you have to bear
I
with me on that
imagine.
one.
I imagine.
But when it came down to it, he basically said, "By the way, you have rheumatoid arthritis," and I'm like, "I'm only 20. Are you serious?"
Wow.
So I'm like, "Okay, well, just something else I had to go through."
Yeah.
I'm like, "What is going on here?" I got kidney issue when I was 16. Started to have arthritis when I was 18, 19, just graduating high school, and then all of a sudden you tell me at 20 I'm having rheumatoid. But like I said, just moments ago, it didn't slow me down.
Mhm.
I still kept doing things. I still kept running for exercise. I still worked. I still did this, still did that, without even thinking that it would, somewhere down the line, gonna, damage me further.
Right.
But what I found out later on is that me doing what I didn't damage myself. It was more uh, genetics
Oh, okay.
that unfortunately did me in. But I don't blame anybody for it. I just had to deal with the cards that were dealt with me.
Right.
So
I know it's easy at times, with something like that that is genetic. I know, it's easy to be able to be grumpy or be upset at, that coming from genetics or at, one specific person or whatever. But it takes a lot to move forward and not allow that to anger or upset you, you know.
right, yeah. I mean, I did have my moments where I was mad and upset, trying to figure out, well, why is this happening,
Mhm.
and why did I get punished per se, quote unquote punished, and and just to add to it, I even though I was working all of this, I found out, at age 28, I had a mini stroke, and I didn't even really realize it. I was over at one of my friend's house. We were watching baseball, and next thing I know is I'm up at the hospital. I'm in the ER. I don't,
Wow.
I don't remember even anything, and the doctors told me I had TIA,
Okay.
um, trans ischemic attack, I believe is what it is.
Okay.
But I guess it's kind of almost in the general area of mini stroke. But I ended up having two of those. Right, unfortunately, both my birthdays. So it's like, oh, happy birthday to me.
Oh
Uh,
man.
yeah. So I had those, but what really set me off, unfortunately, and just unfortunately just made it even worse. I was starting to find out that my uh, bones and joints and all that were starting to deteriorate really bad because of me having the mini strokes, and then eventually I had seizures. I had epilepsy when I was about 30.
Wow.
So unfortunately, all that it just the epilepsy, and I had several of them, and it just rocked my body to the point where that's basically how I am right now.
Yeah.
It just got me to the point where I was hunched over when I'm walking. I can't walk flat footed.
Mhm.
When I walk and stuff, it's almost on my tippy toes. And I've gone to rehab a few times for physical rehab. It's worked to a certain extent, but so it's been a challenge. But I basically found out like 2 or 3 years ago that as much as I want to continue working, I can't,
Right.
because I'm being told by doctors my I'm deteriorating really bad, and I got these degenerative everything.
Yeah.
So it's like a rain on a parade almost, basically is what it was.
Right. Yeah, and you I'm sure that you still were at that point where you had plans of things that you wanted to do, and
Right,
and then
right.
we've talked about that before on the show, having to completely change up from the plans that you had to be able to figure out what you're going to do. And I'm sure, we've all faced having to come to terms with that. And how did you deal with that? How did you move forward from that?
Well, as most of you in this room know, that it wasn't easy, obviously, and that's first and foremost. It's not easy, but you somehow find a way to get yourself up, dust yourself off, and move on as best you can. It's not always easy, obviously,
Right.
and it doesn't even have to be from a physical standpoint. It could be from uh, anything you've experienced in life, no matter physically, mentally, anything like that. It doesn't matter, or even verbally. Well, that goes with mental, but still.
Right.
But anyway, but yeah, it took a rough on me a lot, only because of the fact that I still wanted to work, I still wanted to do this, still wanted to do that,
Hmm.
but yet here I'm finding myself I can't anymore.
Right.
And what am I gonna do? Okay, how am I gonna work? How am I gonna support myself when
Yeah.
I'm having all these issues and everything? And I got these doctors telling me that in a couple more years you might not be able to do anything at all.
Wow.
And I mean, I've been walking with several canes over a several year period now, but then it got to the point where even that wasn't even really helping much anymore. And so my biological mother, Cheryl,
Hmm.
um, and I believe my sister chipped in too. They end up giving me a walker,
Yeah.
which I don't know. I don't know if you've seen it.
I think I have.
You
Yeah.
might have, yeah.
Yeah.
If you haven't in person, then you've seen it on Facebook probably.
Yeah. I
'Cause-
think in the picture that we shared for the
right,
show,
yeah,
I think, yeah.
that particular walker. But
I'm
then,
sure that helped a lot. It
but
made
then again,
a difference.
I've also got two cats in my house,
Yeah.
so they like to lay on it too.
Oh yeah.
So it's pretty rough.
understand
It's pretty
that.
rough on the seat right now. They've scratched a lot of it, but
Yeah.
it still works.
Yeah. I understand that completely. We've got 3 at home, so I gotcha. But I'm sure switching out to that, was that like a challenge having to go from using the cane to that, or was that something that was such an easier thing to use to help you around?
Well, it was, but it wasn't. About a week after I had received it and had a friend of mine help me, assemble it and everything. Most of it was already assembled, but obviously, just there was a few things you had to, do or whatnot. Um, but about a week after I got it, I actually tested it out from my place, and I walked for a little bit. But I discovered that, like 2 blocks away from my house, I was so outwinded, I actually thought I was going to collapse on the
Oh
sidewalk.
no.
And I was obviously by myself. Something like that even made it even more worse. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
thankfully I had a
terrifying.
phone on me just in case something happened. But thankfully it didn't. But I made it to where I was going to go because I wanted to test it out.
Right.
And so I guess when I got the walker, it was like a big reality check for me saying, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. Your body is, even though you've tried for so long to, slow the progression down, you've also at the same time, besides the genetic stuff, but you've also worked yourself to the point where, you've used so much of your bones and joints and all that, you just, it's, you're fighting. And even though you're trying to fight to survive, it, sometimes it just wasn't easy, and that's where it also mentally comes in a way for me, because it's like I was so used to doing, I was used to work and uh, and driving, biking, and all this kind of stuff, and helping people out, and then all of a sudden, bam, 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 bam,
Everything's
over the
getting
last
taken
6-7
away.
years, yeah, domino effect.
Yeah.
So
That's
it became a real mental challenge for me to have the walker, and I use it for when I go into like restaurants and stuff. But most generally, I can use the cane still for most things. if I'm shopping in Walmart, you have to use the mobility scooter because there's no way I can walk behind a cart anymore. I tried that 2 years ago, and I said, "Oh, well, I guess these days are over,"
Yeah.
unfortunately. So yeah, it's really like I said, the last 2 or 3 years though, it's been really um, it's been really it's been really interesting. Let's put it that way.
Right. Now, when we talk about the mental health part of it, when you are out in public, does that ever affect you with worrying about what other people think, or if they ask, or how do you deal with stuff like that?
It did for a short time. I'll be honest, it did. Even though I worked in mental health and have talked to other people,
Right.
but then thinking, what I used to tell them people and every now and then trying to apply it to my own self. Once I found out I was starting to have, the issues happening, that's, um, yeah, it did take a mental toll on me a little bit, and I wasn't necessarily worried about what people were thinking
Hmm.
because I was too worried about, you know, more of the lines of uh, what I'm doing and how I'm getting through it and everything.
Hmm.
I'll just get my groceries and get out.
Right.
And if I had to beep the little horn on the scooter, I will. Beep, 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 get away.
Right. There you go.
Oh.
And I ask those questions because my dad he deals with COPD, and my
Oh.
dad went from being a mechanic at Harley Davidson and working on all that stuff to ending up in the hospital and waking up with a tube in his throat and not
Oof.
understanding what happened. So now for him, he walks around with oxygen in 24/7. He's got the bag and everything, and that affected him and worrying about what people were thinking and what they were seeing, and I know it's different from what you've had to go through, but
Mhm.
it is, you're right, it's a mental thing, and he had to decide, well, my life's different now, I have to make a difference or a change in my life to adjust,
Right.
and that's hard.
And it's like I said just a few minutes ago. It doesn't matter if you've gone through some physical issues or been through, some verbal confrontations or physical or not physical, but mental confrontations or combination of all three. That's even
Right.
worse. But if you get the trifecta like that, then it's really bad. But I guess my stubbornness, because I am very stubborn, and and it's
What?
it's very yeah I am, and it's very apparent to a lot of people, even though I try not to. Yeah, I see you over there. Thanks, Don. Um, but no, I get my stubbornness actually from my dad because my dad's 64 and that man does not know when to stop. He's on SSI himself because he's had a lot of physical issues himself over the last 10 years, 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
But he's 64 and that man does not slow down at all. He's just zooming around town of Romeo he's still working himself.
Mhm.
I'm like, I honestly still wish I could.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different when you have to change up everything, and it just seems like you've had a lot of stuff just happen, and like you said, the trifecta.
Yeah,
And it's good to see though that you don't give up, and we've seen it. You've come in here to be on our other podcasts and
yep,
everything, and I even seen you biking before and all that stuff, and
yeah,
that it's inspiring though too, because I see what you go through for some of it, and I see you doing
right.
that stuff, and now to where you're at still, you're still helping people out and
Y-
still doing that.
Yeah, I try my best as I can. It's not as not as not as well, not well, but I don't do as much as I used to, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But I try my best to keep doing either what I did or whatnot. But I know I can only do it on Sundays, but I still try to you know uh, uh, go through everything and push through everything and just try to help when I can.
And I know that there's going to be days where you probably have days where you're just like, okay, I can get a lot more stuff done today, and then there's days that you're just probably wiped out.
Yeah, and and me being the weather person that I've been for all these years, and I've got a grip on when the bad weather's coming and all that kind of stuff, so
Hmm.
I can prepare, because of how I am, and because of how I am physically and everything, you know, when it gets to the rainy days or the humidity days and all that kind of stuff, that gets to me so bad. I don't want to do a dang thing. I
Mhm.
just, I'm just like completely drained. I could just wake up, and within the first 5-10 minutes, I already know that I'm gonna not do a dang thing today.
Right.
Nada.
Right.
Don't even bother me. Well, you can call me maybe, but that's about it.
Yeah. And that's hard too because when you have people that are used to seeing you get up and do whatever and then those kind of things hit you. Has that been hard for, with your friends and family to understand that kind of stuff? How do you navigate that?
No, because I've been very thankful that the majority of my friends and family, have obviously have seen me, throughout the last few years, struggle, go downhill, and all and whatnot. Even though I try to, uh, keep pushing, and even though I'm like, I'm not gonna let everything, slow me down. As much as it's trying, I can't let it slow me down. Even though, yeah, I do have the mental days where I want to just say, I'm not in it today. I'm just gonna check out.
Yep.
But but it's like I said,
Tony over there.
I see that. But as I was turning my head to you, say,
You gotta love the studio because
I
you never
I
know
always,
what's gonna happen.
no, I always have it. And the Don't Make the Weird podcast. I was obviously a guest for that, and
That was
coincidentally
fun.
on the Valentine's show.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a fun
that was
episode.
funny.
That was a fun
But
episode.
yeah, but for several years, I was doing TV, radio. I was doing the mental health and all that. Um, and I was basically going from 5:30 in the morning until like 10 o'clock at night. It seemed, and so I did that for obviously several years, and it just finally got to the point where I was tired, and I'm just like, I've done all I could do. I've been on all these boards. I've been getting paid for doing certain things and all kinds of stuff, but I'm seeing where it's taking a toll on my body a little bit, and I got to remember that my body is not like it was once before, and even though I was only in my 20s, because like I said, I was already starting to experience everything when I was in my 20s, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and so I had to learn to step back, even though it was hard for me because of how I love to give to everybody and help everybody out as best I could, but I had to take a step back, and for a few years, I was very limited on how much I did in terms of helping people.
Yeah.
I mean, I still did, but I wasn't doing no crazy, 17 hours worth of stuff,
Right. Right.
and running myself, I mean, I know there was a few times the mental health place I worked at, um, we had an unfortunate situation come up, and I had 4 or 5 people knocking at my door at 2:30 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, wow, wait a minute, why do I have to be involved in this? But it's because of the person that it involved in the first place. And I'm like, okay, just give me a few minutes to get dressed. Thankfully, it was nice outside, and it wasn't, winter or anything. So I was able to get on my bike and go.
Right.
I didn't have a car at that point, so I had to just hike on the bike. And thankfully, I was only a few blocks away from where I had to go, obviously. But thankfully, that only happened once, and I'm like, I don't want that to happen ever again.
Right.
Even though I don't want to see anybody in that situation ever again, I
Right.
just don't want it to happen at 2:30 in the morning and me coming in and having 4 or 5 people knocking and ringing the doorbell at my other place that I lived at before where I'm at now. But
Did you tell anybody now where you're at? Just kind of keep that quiet so you don't have that happen again.
well, yeah,
Right.
exactly. But no, no, I only a certain number of people knew where I moved to.
Mhm.
Obviously, Dawn being one of them. But but anyway, obviously my family and friends knew, but there was a lot of other people that knew where I lived previously that I tried my best to just go certain ways around town so they wouldn't know where I live.
Right. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Sometimes that happens, but since going through everything that you have you been able to have other platforms that you've talked about this with to help maybe reach out to other people that are facing these kind of things, or was this your first kind of interview with?
Well, I guess this is a first like this. Um, yeah, this is definitely a first.
I just wondered because there's sometimes when you're able to reach out and somebody's going through the same thing that they didn't realize that there's other people that they can talk to. It helps out so much. So that's another reason why I was really happy to be able to have you on the show. And I know you talked about seizures and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Are you now having to take medication for the rest of your life for this, or
Yeah, yeah. At first, I they had me on a medication called Keppra. And for the like first 2 years, it was doing fine. It was helping. I mean, yeah, I still had the occasional seizure from time to time, which they told me even with the medication, it was still going to happen. But thankfully, it limited how many I actually ever had. Um, but then I started having some issues with the Keppra. I had some kind of bad side effect from it. I mean, of course, every medication in the world has some kind of side effect,
right? Oh yeah,
but
there's like a mile long list on those.
exactly. You see all the commercials.
Pretty much, yeah. And
I'm
then you'll
like,
be okay.
yeah. I mean, why am I going to take this medication if I'm going to have all these like 20 million side effects going to hurt me? Wait a minute, the pill's supposed to help me, but yet it's going to hurt me at the same time.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with that.
Was that something that was
50-50, yeah.
was that something that was hard to adjust to having to take more
Oh
medicine
God. Well,
or
the thing is, I had. Well, the Keppra that I had at the time, and well, even when I switched to a different medication, they were these horse pills, and I hate them. They're 500 milligram, and for the Keppra and the one I'm on currently is Depakote, the extended relief one or whatever. But uh, the thing with me is when I was very younger, um,
nope, you're good.
okay. That would be bad. Anywho, but no, no, seriously though, when I was younger, probably in elementary school aged, um, I had some unfortunate experiences with my stepmother. Me and my stepmother, unfortunately, didn't see eye to eye for a long time, and that was obviously with the territory. But we've gotten better as obviously we got older. But I was getting to the point where I couldn't take or wouldn't take any medication. You know, being a defiant child or whatever.
Yeah.
So she did a few things, and then as I got older, it just started. Every time I would take a medication for anything, I would just have this like gag
Yeah.
reflex, and so I was. I know it's kind of a mental thing in a way too,
Mhm.
but it's like every time I took a pill, I had a flashback to what happened at the time, and it wasn't pleasant. I'll put it that way.
Right.
But nonetheless, after I started having the seizure medications, that's kind of I was starting to have the issue because 500 milligram horse pills, and I was supposed to take two a day,
Oh wow.
one in the morning and one at night, and because unfortunately my seizures were more common at night. Thankfully, knock on woods, or bald head either or, um, rub the magic 8 ball. But anyway. My seizures mostly happen at night. I was very thankful that none of them have happened during the day. I will say though, I do have the common blackouts from time to time, but not a lot. But unfortunately, most of my seizure activity happen at night, and it's scary because obviously it's in the dark, in the bedroom, and all that, and the person next to you flips on the light, and you're flopping around like a fish out of water,
Right.
and you can't obviously relay anything to that person. They just have to act quick, call 911, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, unfortunately, I had to do a couple different things with the medication for the seizures, and at one point I had to take an increase at one point,
Oh
and
wow.
so, but I'm all right doing them.
Yeah.
They've helped me. Thankfully, my last seizure episode was just about 2 years ago now. So
Oh, wow.
thankfully I haven't had one since. But between April 3rd of 2013 to now, I've only had probably about 7 of them.
Oh wow.
So I've been very thankful for that, regard that, I haven't had as many
Yeah.
as some people have. Those other people, I was mentioning this off the air before it went on, that a friend of my stepmom and dad's,
Mhm.
more so my stepmother's actually, um, he had seizures and then he unfortunately passed away.
Oh wow.
But the thing is, they found out that as he was seasoned, he ended up having a heart attack on top of it, and so yeah, that's sounds a little scary to know that you can actually die from a seizure too, and that's something I try not to think about, obviously,
Right.
but it's always back in your head. You're like, when you have a seizure next time, whenever it happens, are you going to pull through it?
Right.
Regardless of 911, and regardless if you get to the ER, are you going to be? And I also found out also that when I have a seizure, my blood sugar goes really, really low.
Oh really?
All my blood sugars, ever since my seizure event started, have been in the 50s when I had one.
Wow.
So it's like, but I'm not diabetic.